Hello everybody and welcome to the second episode of the Does Metal Have Soul podcast. We're calling this episode Other Metal Bands. I'm one of your hosts, Mr. Levi Clay, and I am here with my partner, Melisa Kelly. Romantically involved Melisa Kelly.
Yes. Hello there. How are you? You can't respond, but that's okay.
I thought you were asking me how I am.
How are you?
I am good. We gigged last night. We
did.
It was my first gig of the year. I think you do your Wednesday nights. Back at the piano with Melisa last night, playing music for people that don't appreciate us. But
being a musician.
It's good fun. It's good fun. It is nice to be out playing. So I think that we had some lovely feedback from the first episode of the podcast.
We did. So here's the thing, right? I don't know if we're supposed to call things in the podcast metalhead musings, because they are metalhead musings.
They are the musings of metalheads.
That I would call metalhead musings. But also it's like, should we call them something else? Overwhelmingly, everyone was very sweet. So thank you very much. It was like really fun to read people. Also with in-jokes. So we'll start with a metalhead musing for that reason.
Oh, it better have Satchel of Richards in there.
Just hold on to your hat, Barbara.
That was an accidental piece of solid gold that we need on a t-shirt.
Suck
a bag of Richards.
How do
Well, I know what you're going to say there. You're going to say you're always thinking about how to make money, but like I'm looking at our setup recording this, and we're using my webcam, which isn't ideal, and for the camera on Melisa, we're using a phone. So it's not like, yes, I do think about ways that we can make money doing things like this. It doesn't need to be big money, but making a little bit of money to improve the overall look of the content is important to me. So go and support Melissa's Patreon page. Because then maybe we won't have to use my phone to film.
I mean, yeah, I'm never reading you for stuff like that, because I do understand that I think about music in a really backwards, old-fashioned kind of way, where I'm like, if you just make art, the people will like it. If you build it, they will come.
That is true, but at the same time, you build it, they come, and then you kind of have to say, please, sir. That is what being a musician is. It's being comfortable saying, please, sir. That's what musicians have always been.
I mean, I'm not going to get into it. It's too early. It's not early. It's 4:30 in the day. But you know what I mean. This one is from Clever Mistakes. And Clever Mistake says, I am gravely offended by the fact that nothing you have ever said could possibly offend me. Seriously, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this economy-sized bag of Richards I have eagerly purchased in anticipation? First-time commenter, long-time subscriber. Congrats on a successful first episode. I can't wait for an episode where you convince prominent black metal bands to record a compilation of nursery rhymes for them from their home countries, which is such a great idea. But why?
Why not?
I really loved that one, because not only was it like an in-joke reference, but just being really sweet. And what a fabulous idea. Black metal bands recording nursery rhymes from their home countries. Would you not enjoy that?
I like a lot of metal. Mm-hmm. And the one area of metal that, well, I guess there's going to be lots of areas of metal that I don't like, but one area that I can confidently say that I don't like is black metal. Black metal isn't for me.
Is it because you're a little bitch?
It's because as a genre of music, the musicians involved in it you'll actually probably be super into black metal, because it's a genre of metal where the artistic expression, the art is more important than everything else. And the message is more important than everything else. And what comes with that is anything that sounds like you've put any effort into the recording whatsoever would be considered shit. So black metal in its purest form should sound like the band at a rehearsal recording on an iPhone with the iPhone just sat in the middle of the room. That's what black metal fans, they're like, oh, have you heard this? Just the purest. Oh, have you heard the Emperor rehearsal from 1987?
Mayhaps, but I think I've heard some black metal on the channel before. I think I heard Black Crown Initiate. I think that was black metal, and it was very highly recorded, so maybe there's been a change.
Well, there's a more modern influence in black metal that fair enough, but when you think of the old black metal and where it came from, no, not for me.
Fair dues.
Tremolo picking minor chords, and yeah.
Moving on then, Jesus Christ. No,
can suck a bag of Richards.
Suck a bag of Richards, black metal. So this one, I think I mentioned this one to you, but it's so good. It's so good. In a sarcastic way, that I had to bring it up again, because the level of mania is top tier. Jill King says, David is a great believer.
Oh God.
They're always the best, though. David is a great believer in cross-pollination of different musical styles.
Is that why he's blended metal with shit? I say that like Melisa doesn't like David Draymond because she's had a lot of bad experience with his fans. I actually like Disturbed a lot.
Boo!
So, yeah.
I don't not like David Draymond, and I don't not like Disturbed. I just think that the fanatics they have that follow him, and then the
they're the worst.
Yeah, and the publicity press releases that David Draymond's team have released to them have caused the fanaticism to be even worse than it would have been, which I think is so gross. Anyway,
but carry on with King Cunt's comments.
Jill King says, cross-pollination, blah, blah, blah. David's voice is highly trained. He needs no assistance from anything electronic. He has had a microphone issue at one of his concerts and was able to continue singing, being heard throughout the arena.
I've just noticed that I can't work out why it's doing it, but my camera during that was sort of pulsating, and I think it's trying to capture like an autofocus thing. So I'm gonna manually focus my camera, but I think it gave the impression that I was pulsating with rage whilst you were saying that.
Just like
I can't fathom the level of stupidity that you have to have.
I can.
To genuinely believe, because of course she never witnessed this. No. Genuinely believe that a man's microphone stopped working, so he just sang into a stadium,
an American stadium,
and filled the stadium.
Yep.
You know, there is an element of truth to the idea that trained singers, in that old-fashioned traditional sense, were trained to project their voice to be able to fill spaces that they were singing in. Mm-hmm. But the spaces that they were singing in were smaller, and the spaces that they were singing in were designed with people that are singing in that style in mind. So they're acoustic spaces that are designed to carry that vocal sound. If we go into the hydro and just start, it doesn't matter how trained you are, right? You're not going to be able to hear me over the sound of a fucking drum kit, let alone an entire. It's just
Even if it was an a cappella performance and something went wrong, and then David Draymond asked the band to not play, he's still not going to be heard by Jimmy up the back seats. That's not going to happen. Do you know what? I kind of want to leave these people in their delulu, because it's like, it obviously makes you happy. But when it starts to cross over and you start to almost deify a man who made up his entire backstory, I'm kidding. But do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
let's calm down. These are just people at the end of the day. These celebrities that you absolutely worship are just human beings. They take a shit like everybody else.
Actually, I don't think that's true with David Draymond. I think he does it whilst doing a handstand. And then takes a gamble whether it falls down the front or the back. You enjoy that? Yeah, we put that on a t-shirt.
You put that on a t-shirt.
But yeah, so people like that, it's like there's this illusion that they have of what it means to be skilled, right? And they have this idea in their mind that David Draymond is just one of the most talented people that's ever lived, and they make that mistake because they love the person, right? And just because you love the art that somebody makes, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are the most skilled person at the thing that it is that they're fucking doing. Because skill, you'll see where I'm going with this, skill comes from dedication to your craft. Now, David is considerably more dedicated to the marketing of his craft than he is the dedication of his craft, right? Musicians who study their instruments, we are dedicated to our craft. I have just recently, this week, taken on a new practice routine, a new practice schedule, because I've taken on a piano mentorship with Noah Kelman. Yeah.
Fancy.
And so we've sat down and worked on my practice routine, and every day, without fail, I get up and I come out here, and for hours, with stopwatches, I have things that I have to practice over and over and over. And some of the things, it's like, I already know this. Maybe I should use this time to do something else. No, because that's not how any mastery comes, right? Practice, and I find this with all of my students. As students, you like the idea of, well, I want to learn this thing, and that once I've played it a couple of times, cool, I've learned it, now let me learn something new. But it's like, no, you have to practice a thing to get good at the thing. And I think for most people, Melissa's doing her fair share of practice as well at the moment at the piano most nights. You've been practicing some guitar stuff to add to your repertoire. But I guess, what I should really hope for is not that I can achieve greatness through daily hours of practice, but that I can achieve greatness by convincing other people that I'm great, and then they'll just do all the work for me. I don't need to be great. You just create legend around the idea of how great you are.
But that's just it. Like, I would support that level of storytelling. I really would, because we've talked about this before. There's certain groups within the Glasgow music scene, musicians, not listeners, because it's never listeners, who think that I'm this like difficult, insufferable diva. And it's like, they've only known about that because someone else has third-hand told them something that they might have witnessed. And I've never done anything to discourage it, because at the same time, as much as I don't like it, it also means that any musician I've interacted with, there's been a base level amount of respect of like, I don't really want to mess with this. I'm a little bit worried about what might happen. So I do understand the reasons behind why you would do it and blah, blah, blah. I just think that when you're starting to talk about stuff like your practice, the things that you've done to create your ability, that's when it starts to get icky, because it's like, well, sorry, but you're basically doing press releases consistently that you don't need pitch correction, you don't need auto-tune, you don't need a microphone, da-da-da-da-da. And even if it's just one person on David's team that's lying, it's also like, guy, calm down.
Yeah, but more importantly, like, you try to keep showing it to people by using it in a video. There's a fabulous video of David singing The Sound of Silence with somebody at the piano, and it is so bad, like, so it's possibly one of the most embarrassing live performances I've ever seen of anyone, apart from that one that you played recently, and that almost killed me.
I love it so much.
Yeah, it almost killed me watching that. But it's so embarrassing. Then when you consider that this person is somebody of renown,
mm-hmm.
and somebody that has a legion of brainwashed idiots that will tell you he's incredibly gifted, it's like, I would never go round and want anybody that follows my work, any of my subscribers, any of my patrons, anyone that buys my books, if you go around telling people that I'm incredibly gifted, you've not listened closely enough to the things that I've tried to tell you. I am not gifted in any way, shape or form. I just work really hard, as many hours as I can find. I put in the hours, and at the end of that, I just want to be good enough for me to be happy. And I think the people that get good at things are the people that are never actually happy with how they are. I don't consider myself good. That's why I keep fucking practicing.
You don't need to tell me. I start most shows or anything I do online with, but what do I know? I'm just a worm. So, yeah, you don't need to tell me.
I mean, you say that, but I believe you had some success this week with the BBC.
Thank you for that segue there, sir. I was on BBC Introducing. We were on at BBC Introducing.
I'm stealing clout there. No, it's you. You write the songs, you record the songs, you mix the songs, you master the songs, you release, you publish the songs, you market the songs. It's all you. I just came in and played a guitar solo and did a guitar track on it. That was it. It
was a very good guitar solo. So I was very excited because getting played BBC it's a very old-fashioned way to do things if you wanted to be, well known as a musician, I think. And they've played me once or twice on like midnight shows and on a couple of jazz shows. But that's the first time that between submitting, acceptance, assignment and playing was all super quick, and it was really flattering, and it just means that I know for surezies now that I'm not completely delusional and that I do have at least some amount of ability, teeny amount of ability to write a good song.
Cool. So what news have you got for me? I guess I can start while you're doing that. It's not news. I just noticed that I'm wearing an Opeth t-shirt. I'm just reminding you and the listeners out there that we're off to see Opeth in Glasgow soon.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
And
I'm very excited.
And then the week after that, like 2 days after that, we go and see Black Sabbath.
Okay, I'm less excited about that. No, okay, let me finish. As someone who has severe deafness on their left side,
you don't think Opeth are going to be loud?
No, I know Opeth will be loud, but I also believe that Zakk Wylde will be old man Iron Maiden loud. Will be so loud that I'll feel physically sick from the bass guitar. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's slightly worrying.
We'll get to hang out with him after the show, and we'll see if we can get him to do a little hello to the Does Metal Have Soul podcast listeners.
Should we? Oh no, he'll tell us to go and eat a bag of Richards.
He can do that. I'll feed him a bag of Richards.
So wait, we're going to see Zakk Wylde so we can assault him.
Yeah.
Oh, my chair.
That's heavy metal, baby.
Okay,
Yeah.
apparently assault is part of heavy metal. Okay, the first one. The first one.
Do it to me.
That's what she said. So, this comes from Metal Injection.
I love that I'm completely blind on these, by the way. Normally, it's been a long time since I've podcast, but me and Mike would curate the news together. But this, I have no idea what Mel's going to bring up. So
You know why I love it? You'll know in a couple of pieces of news time when you want to crawl inside your own butthole. Trust me on that one. Just put a pin in that one. Boop. Latest news. Ghost quietly announces a new frontman.
I did see this.
Ahead of a tour. You
Yeah, I did see
motherfucker.
this.
Ghost clearly have a new album coming this year, which means there's a new frontman for the band. While we don't know anything about the album at the moment, Black Sabbath's farewell show announcement this morning revealed the new Ghost frontman is named Papa V Perpetua.
So Tobias Forge in another bit of makeup.
Yes.
Well, you like the artistry of Ghost.
Yes.
Yeah, or the kind of lore of Ghost.
I fucking love
Respect
it.
it, yeah.
I just think it's like... Being a musician is one thing. I mean, Levi talk about this a lot, and I get up on my high horse about it. In fact, there's not a horse high enough, and I'm not proud of myself because of it. But I just think being a musician is one thing, but being a creative is a different thing, and being a performer is another thing as well. These things all have Venn diagram crossover, but I just think we meet a lot of people who don't. They want to be creative, but they're not actually creative, or they don't understand creativity, And then when you see people who do, you're like, that's fucking magic.
Yeah, my issue with Ghost is it's not really an issue. I don't think they're bad. In fact, I think when it comes to artistry and, image and creating lore around the band, they're right up there, like solid 9 to 10 out of 10. Unfortunately, I just don't think the music matches up to that same level of intensity in creativity. But I do remember they won their Grammy. I remember getting that album on CD, which dates me, I guess. And I remember the track Mummy Dust, which I thought was pretty cool.
What's Mummy Dust about?
My Mummy Dust.
There's a lot of jokes I want to tell right now, but I'm actually don't think I'm going to tell them. But I saw that one, and it made me think about these kind of musicians who, for them, it's not just about music, which is still like totally important, but it's all about the pageantry that goes all alongside it.
Yeah.
And I love it so much.
Am I to assume that one of the news stories that you're talking about is going to be the Black Sabbath farewell final concert, Ozzy's final concert?
I was going to talk about that, yeah.
You sound very exhausted by the notion.
No. I've read a lot about it. I've not got one of the articles because there's so many of them.
Yeah, of course.
But I went over them. It was a lot of Sharon Osbourne talking about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why is Sharon Osbourne talking about it?
Because Ozzy Osbourne is on life support.
Oh.
Ozzy Osbourne can't walk anymore. He's going to be doing this gig sitting down. And on the one hand, fantastic. I'm glad that people get the opportunity to see Ozzy. I'm really glad that I got the opportunity to see Ozzy, which is something I didn't think I was, because Ozzy's Ozzy as a solo artist, not even in Sabbath, as a solo artist, is one of my all-time favourite artists. So, huge influence on me. I have no interest in going to this gig, mainly because Ozzy was past it when I saw him. He can't even stand now. But I'm glad there's some nostalgia that people are going to be able to enjoy. I believe proceeds for the concert are to charities, which I support. I don't support the ticket prices, or at least the rumours of ticket prices that I've seen. I saw a post today, couldn't verify the validity of it, and they were talking in Australian dollars, but you're talking like $450 for standing.
What?
Yeah.
No, ma'am.
And they can justify it because it's Black Sabbath. And not only is it Black Sabbath, it's Ozzy Osbourne's last ever concert.
So they say.
Well, if Sharon has anything to do with it, I'm sure she'd try and work out a way. Ozzy is prime for, hologram concerts when he dies. Sharon will milk him for all he's worth.
Have you seen Frankie Valli perform recently?
Yes.
I fear for Ozzy. I fear for Ozzy that it's going to be him coming out just going... and it's like, Sherry!
Well,
Sherry, baby!
I saw Ozzy at Download a few years ago, probably about 5 years ago now, and his vocals were really good, which tells me that he was using tracks. He must have been. Like, the level of vocal that was coming out of him compared to live recordings that I'd heard of him just a few years prior, they were not the same.
Maybe he'd had some vocal training.
I had a great time. He stood there like a dead person, hung onto his microphone and stared at the auto cue, which has all the lyrics on it. It's but I got to see Zach Wilde, so I'm always happy when I get to see Zach.
Come see, come sa.
Right.
Okay, next piece of news. Okay, this one is so incredibly funny to me. I love it so much. So Courtney LaPlante, who's the lead singer of Spirit Box.
Yep.
I always liked her, mostly because...
Oh, I think I know this story as well.
Well, mostly because I thought she's got a really lovely voice. Yeah. She's very beautiful. And she just seems like she's got a good bit of, gumption about her. And after I saw this interview, I now love her 1,000,000,000%.
Is this the interview where somebody thought she was someone else and she just pretended to be her?
She went with it, Susan. She literally, the interviewer, and she didn't miss a beat, when the interviewer was like, so, Poppy, how does it feel to be here, blah, blah, blah. And then Courtney LaPlante was just like, well, name of band is, I'm really proud of everyone in the band. We've worked hard to get here. And the interview goes on for like a solid 3 minutes. Have you seen the interview?
I've not seen it, no.
Can I show you a little bit of it?
Sure. Is this the thing that was going to make me die inside?
I thought this might, because you don't like cringe. I tried to show, there's a video of a woman singing the national anthem, but she thinks it's pre-recorded and she messes up. She asks to go back, and then there's just a voice from the fucking peanut gallery going, it's live! And she just goes, oh! And it's very funny, but Levi nearly passed away when I showed him.
Interviews I find particularly itchy scratchy because, I've worked interviewing people for magazines and I've had my fair share of ropey.
I would love to see some.
So we're here with rock royalty, Poppy. No, you are. I mean, you got nominated against Judas Priest, who I just talked to. Metallica.
I have to say, I am Poppy, and I am really happy to be here, nominated with Knocked Loose. I really hope we win.
And she just go 3 minutes.
Well, what I will say is there's nothing cringe about that, unless at the end of it she turns around to the interviewer and says, also, you do know that I am not Poppy. That would be, because in that
moment, double check.
In that moment, you and I, like, the air just got sucked out of the room, right? And that's one of those moments where the air just gets sucked out of the room.
She is a queen amongst the people.
Well, it could be both, couldn't it? Like, I'm sure it isn't the case, but there are people that if they were mistaken for somebody, they wouldn't have the confidence to correct the person, so they just play the role.
I think she goes to correct the interviewer, because when the interviewer goes, I'm here with Poppy, rock royalty, Courtney LaPlante kind of goes as if to be like, I'll stop you right there, my name's Courtney. But because the interviewer talks over her, and to be like, no, but you are, diva, you are. And Courtney's just like...
Now, I can't expect you to have done your full research on this, but has the interviewer commented?
They have. They were dying inside. They were dying inside. I very briefly read a little statement from the interviewer just saying that they were deeply embarrassed, as you would be.
Yeah.
Funny, but... Okay, the final piece of news. To be honest, it is me being a little bit of a bitter Betty about it. It is me being sort of like... Or not a bitter Betty, but just being like, oh, shush. It is about Iron Maiden.
Okay.
So that might give you a brief...
Oh. I think I know what this one is as well.
What?
Is it James LaBrie saying that he was asked to join Iron Maiden?
No.
Oh.
Why the fuck would they do that?
Well, because this was in like 1993 after their second album had come out, with the first album with James LaBrie on it, and after Bruce had left.
Okay.
So as Bruce's replacement, he was invited. I saw that. I did see that.
Oh, James.
Lol.
You've really got out for James LaBrie.
Well, we had a comment on the podcast last week about somebody who had commented on my love of Symphony X and said that's really, really cool. And they mentioned Dream Theater. They said they're more of a Dream Theater fan. And I always get to turn around and go, I have a Dream Theater tattoo. Thank you very much.
Loser.
I'm not fucking proud of it. If I could scrape it off, I probably would. But I know my fair share about Dream Theater.
Oh, nah. Okay, so Metal Suck says Bruce Dickinson shoots down backing tracks for Iron Maiden. If it's not real, it's not Maiden.
I know this is like a slight aside, but I can't help but think what an unfortunate name Dick in Son is. But carry on.
Oh, you're not allowed that one. That was such a boy joke. If there's one thing that we can say about Iron Maiden, it's that when you watch 66-year-old cancer survivor Bruce Dickinson running around on stage belting out 11-minute epics like Rime of the Ancient Mariner before stopping the show to bitch about someone smoking weed somewhere in the venue, you know it's 100% real. And that's exactly how it's going to stay. In an interview for the most recent issue of Classic Rock magazine, Dickinson doubled down on the idea that Iron Maiden was the real article, opting not to dabble in a lot of artificial tactics that other bands use to make their live show sound the best it possibly can. Despite the band's increasing age and rigorous tour schedule, Dickinson pledged that the band will never use things like backing tracks in their live show.
Well, you don't need to when you've got 3 fucking guitar players.
No one should ever have 3 guitar players for any reason.
Backing tracks are cheaper. Just have 2 and use a backing track for the 3rd.
And quieter. Sure, you could read this comment and think, okay, boomer, but that's not entirely fair. As long as these guys can still perform at the highest level, and that is the most important part,
That's a push.
they have every right to hold firm on this issue. Once Dickinson starts slipping in the vocals department or Steve Harris can't do those iconic galloping bass lines, then they should either reconsider their stance or call it quits. I just read it and I popped around because there was another couple of different outlets that were doing a very, roughly the same
Please
thing.
tell me this is going to conclude with you having found evidence that they use tracks live, please.
No, no. I don't have the energy to go looking because they have so much stuff. But I read it and I was just like, I think that Bruce Dickinson is a great performer. And he's got a really great voice, or at least some of the older stuff that I've seen, he has a really great voice. But I've also seen clips from his solo live stuff, and some of it's really not good. And lovely Steve, OG Steve,
Not Steve Harris.
Not Steve Harris. OG Steve from my Patreon, he asked me to do a Dickinson solo performance reaction, and a part of the solid last minute of it, the bassist was wildly out of tune in her vocals. She was singing over Bruce Dickinson.
I remember it.
Oh, it was so bad. Yeah. And I just thought to myself...
Yeah, but that's Bruce solo versus Bruce in the band. They're
sure.
different business entities.
Okay.
So the production value is...
I think for me, I was just reading all of it and going, but surely...
Maybe you should use backing tracks? Is that way?
Not so much that you should, or maybe you shouldn't kind of shit on that because you don't know in the future when you might need that. Because like the article said, maybe when they get a bit older, they might start relying on that stuff. But you've already poo-pooed it. And also, if a band's using stuff like click tracks, is that also in the same
No, I'm not going
thing?
to give Bruce a hard time for it because he's a smart enough man to know how to market in his industry and know how his demographic values authenticity above all else. It would be a different thing entirely if he was David Draymond, who understood that his audience valued authenticity above all else, but were willing to mislead them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas Bruce's position is his audience want the most authentic thing, regardless. And it's, the rose-tinted glasses of a live gig is amazing. I've seen so many bands where I was convinced that was the best live performance I've ever seen, and then I heard live recordings of it afterwards. I'm like, oh, that sounds like a different thing.
Yeah.
Like you get caught up in the emotion. So people that are going to go and pay the money that you have to pay to go and see Iron Maiden, a band that have been around for longer than either of us and have the legacy that they do, they're not going to hear it when it's less than perfect. So,
sure.
yeah.
I think for me, I was just reading it and you're right. And I would give it to Bruce because, again, we know he's a great vocalist. We know he's a great performer. But I was just like, so where do click tracks fall into that? Like, how do... Because I know... Because I'm in a different genre, so nobody gives a fuck. But at least it depends, because if we went to see someone like Corey Henry, you better believe that the chances are his drummer is not using a click track in some circumstances and 100% using it in others. And it's just like, where does that fall on the authenticity scale?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, actually, click tracks, because they inherently don't add anything to the music, but they keep everybody on the same page.
But some people would argue that like the increased tempo of a song is about passion.
Oh no, I agree.
I
agree. I'm not pro click track in any way, shape, or form. I'm actually, speaking of practice, I'm relatively anti metronome in practice because I know it sounds wild, right? But Jeff Berlin, the bass player, talked about this a long time ago, and he gets a lot of flack for it. But he talks about not using metronomes, and I don't think his idea is actually don't ever use a metronome, but it's not to put the idea of a metronome on some sort of holy grail in practice, because when you think of all of the musicians that we think of throughout rock and pop history, Latin musicians, etc., who we think of as having had great time, none of them practiced with a metronome. Not one single motherfucker practiced with a metronome. So how do they have such good time? And it's they have good time because their time is actually, I'm going to say better, but let's say different to a metronome. A metronome is a fixed time, and it's really, really great for measuring progress and things like speed and the like. But good time is not the same as fixed time. Like if you go back and listen to all of the great records that you love from growing up, none of them were recorded with a click track, and I don't think anybody would say, you know what would have made this better if they recorded it with a click track. Bullshit. When music gets exciting, it naturally wants to speed up. And when the dynamics come down, it's natural for it to slow down. It might only be by a couple of BPM here or there, but these are things we feel rather than things that we count. So I firmly believe in this idea that when I'm practicing, my internal sense of time is the thing that is so good. Because if I had perfect fixed metronomic time and you were playing with a bunch of musicians and they started to slow down, you don't just keep playing with the perfect metronomic time and be like, guys, follow me, I've got the perfect time.
Get your shit together.
Yeah, that wouldn't make you a good musician.
No.
Time is flexible. Metronomes don't allow for that flexibility. In fact, Wayne Krantz, great guitar player, released a metronome app a couple of years ago, and the gimmick of this metronome app was that it randomly sped up and slowed down.
Oh, that's cool.
Because you had to react to it, and that's what real music is. It speeds up and it slows down. Of course, like I say, metronomes are good for measuring, because of course if you're speeding up a little bit because the song is exciting, that's a different thing from, just speeding up because you have no concept of trying to keep good time. Yeah. Like there were definitely a couple of moments when we were playing last night where I'm like, oh, we've sped this up and we've sped it up quite a lot. Yeah. We've got a little bit carried away in this one. So that's an example of like not good time. But so I'm not anti-metronome. You should introduce elements of metronome into your practice, but you should not rely on it. Like, oh man, I've got good time. How do you know? Because I play in time with a metronome. That's just not good time.
Boo.
James Jameson never used a metronome.
Well, it's the listening thing, and I think that's a lot of things that musicians don't hold in much sort of regard anymore. You don't have people talking about how good a listener they are when they come and audition for bands or go out and do things in the world. They're just like, here's my chops, here's this solo, here's this 4-minute solo of me showing that I've consumed everything Stevie Ray Vaughan has ever made. No, I'm not saying he's not a good guitarist. I'm just saying I'm sick of hearing guitarists imitate him.
Right, should we move on to the next section?
Sure.
So before we go into talking about the subject of metal at hand, I thought it would be worth pointing out that we have created a Does Metal Have Soul playlist on Spotify. It is a combination or curation of the tracks that we listen to and other tracks from that era that we personally enjoy. I mean, I'm sure you could probably put it on screen.
Oh, yeah.
So it's tracks that we enjoyed and tracks that we maybe didn't talk about on the podcast. It's mainly songs that we had mentioned, but also what did you add to that you enjoyed?
I added Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. Which,
I told you that was a good one.
Well, when you described it to me as it's got jazz elements to it, and I was like, get big. There's no jazz elements. But to be fair, it does have it's got a major seventh in it.
It's a bunch of major seventh chords in there, and it played with like a more laid back, clean.
Yeah,
tone.
like a bridge section that's all sort of, which was very cool.
And there's a nice melody on it.
Yeah.
I'll play it. Hang on, let me shut it over.
Ba 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 da 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 da
da. Yeah. I think it's a really nice melody, and obviously it's not jazz. Of course it's not jazz, but just harmony-wise, playing those. It's like an F sharp minor 7 chord, so you can add some colour. it's an F sharp minor 7 going to an E major 7, and then for me the really wild part is that part at the end where it goes. If you listen in the guitar, that note is in there, and again that's like a B major 7 chord. So it's not jazz. You couldn't go to a jazz concert and play that sort of stuff, but it is inherently, like, as a contrast from where it's come from, you've got the metal that what's in C sharp.
That was lovely.
It's not stuff like that doesn't work so well on the piano, but you get the idea. Like it's the contrast, and I think that's kind of cool. So yeah, that playlist is there for everybody to go and enjoy, and we will update that with music week by week that we've listened to because of the stuff that we're talking about. Speaking of, I mean, you look like you want to say something.
No, I was listening.
Okay, so before moving on from Black Sabbath, moving forward in metal history, Mel and I had a discussion this week, or lots of discussions this week, about how confident I could be to say Black Sabbath were the first metal band. Now, of course, much like when I talk about the passage of time in music, the beat, the pulse isn't a tangible thing. It's not something you can touch. Just like the concept of metal isn't a thing that you can hold in your hand. So you can say this is the first band that had a skull on the album, on the cover of an album. That's something you can say. It's impossible to say this is the first metal band, because people have different opinions on what metal is. I think of metal and the history of metal as coming from that Black Sabbath, but we did mention briefly last time Led Zeppelin. Of course, the Immigrant Song I think of as being... That's like one of Zeppelin's heavier tunes. And the year before that, they released Whole Lot of Love, and that riff... That
was on Top of the Pops in the UK.
That was the theme tune to Top of the Pops.
Yeah.
It's that's definitely quite a heavy riff. Definitely, no doubt about that. So I get those arguments, and of course Deep Purple, I think they were formed in 1968, so they're pre-Sabbath. But again, those first albums, they feel more kind of psychedelic rocky than the more metal sound that they moved into. And again, it's all perspective, isn't it? I imagine an 18-year-old kid today die on the hill that Deep Purple were never a metal band, a heavy metal band.
Yeah.
So, but what I thought would be really interesting in this episode would be to look into some of the other bands that are Sabbath era and pre-Sabbath era who maybe were the first metal bands.
Listen, I've read a bunch of stuff about the basic arguments around who first created metal music. I think it's very similar to, I wrote a dissertation as part of my BA about the origins of soul music, and it's the exact same. There's a whole bunch of arguments about who started it and what it's actually foundationally made of, like what parts have been stolen from what other bands or pieces of media that were happening in the world at that time. And I think with metal, there just seems to be two camps. Now, I don't know about metal in different countries, like, I don't know, Japan. I imagine there wasn't any in the early 60s, 70s, whatever. But there seems to be the British camp of people who are talking about what was created or how metal was created, and the American camp, and that seems to be the ultimate divider of who it was specifically that created the very first metal band.
Yeah, it's obviously metal came out of rock music, which of course came out of blues music. Blues music was essentially killed by rock music, and then in the 60s. We have, of course, what everybody would refer to as the Great British Invasion, where all of the British bands started to get access to all those blues records, and they started to make music, which, of course, is Led Zeppelin and the Yardbirds, etc.
The Yardbirds, I was reading about them.
So from that, England in particular has always had a very close link to blues music and to metal, because of course we talk about bands like Black Sabbath and we talk about bands like Judas Priest. There, we have Zepplin, and I mentioned the Yardbirds. Like we have all these bands, right? But music was happening in the States, and one band that is probably very important to mention is the band Coven.
This whole thing blew my mind. Like, I'll never be the greatest metal fan that ever was, but even reading about this stuff, I was like,
Coven's debut album came out in 1969, I believe.
69.
I mean, Coven itself already has the dark imagery that we talked about. And the album's title is Witchcraft Destroys Minds and Reaps Souls.
Sounds like a fucking fabulous night in.
Which is, again, very dark. The opening track on that album is called
Black Sabbath.
And
Sorry.
their bass player
Their bass player's name
was
Oz Osbourne. We're through the looking glass here, people.
Yeah. So it's definitely that last one is funny, but obviously coincidence, because when your surname is Osbourne, chances are at some point someone in your life has called you Oz.
Or you kill someone who's making the music you want to make, and then you take their name, you go back to your home country, and you create a band named after one of their songs, and you assume their life like the talented Mr. Ripley.
I see.
Sorry, that was completely insane.
Yeah, that was. So I do think, Coven, definitely interesting. I believe if you look them up on Wikipedia, they're probably going to have the tag of proto-metal.
So, like, first metal.
Yeah, the prototype type thing. Not quite the thing, but
yeah, okay.
Just before the thing. And I should check whether it was Coven or the other band that we're going to talk about. I could have made that note. But it is believed that the first reference to the term heavy metal was used in describing in a review of these bands that we're talking about. So, it's really funny, isn't it? Like, if you had a time machine, for me, I always think one of the things I would love to do if I had a time machine is always going back in time and showing people from the past things from the future to see what they thought about those things. We see films all the time with all these special effects and just going back to, like 1960 and showing Hitchcock a horror film from today.
Do you know what I'd like to do?
Go on.
Go back in time and take someone from, say, Victorian London who's deeply religious and make them sit and watch an entire episode of Drag Race. I think they just have a stroke.
Yeah. So you're just looking to upset people.
Yeah.
But also, I guess it would be interesting because history, I've always been fascinated by history, and history is something that we pass on to each other as the years go by. But there's always a degree of interpretation and a degree of how the story was told. Mm-hmm. And it would be really, really interesting to actually get to go back and have conversations or witness the things that were happening at the time, because all we know of history is the thing that we're told. And, the winners of wars write the history, as it's often said. So I would love to go back and talk to Tommy Iommi.
Poor Tommy. Tommy is a combination of two, Tony exactly. And Tommy.
No, I'd love to go back to those guys and ask them what they thought their music was, what they thought they were doing.
Yeah, show, I don't know, fucking Richie Blackmore or someone like that. Show them something like Sleep Token and be like, this is metal now.
Yeah. This is what you are currently the father of. Yeah. To me, that's like really cool and exciting.
Yeah, that's quite cool.
Anyway, so we are going to go and listen to some of Coven. Their album Witchcraft Destroys Minds and Reaps Souls.
Yeah,
now, of course, we actually didn't get any negative feedback on this, but for the show you're watching now on YouTube for free, we cut the music out. So
yes, okay.
We didn't get any negative feedback.
We didn't get any negative feedback. Also, before I forget, thank you, Clever Mistakes, for your comment. I almost forgot that. We didn't, and I think a couple of people, which makes me like, a couple of people thought. You know how I put the little Fallout tune of a couple of people thought for a split second that that's actually what Ozzy sounded like straight up. That brought me a lot of joy.
So you won't hear this here, but if you do want to hear the full unedited version of the podcast, you can head on over to Melisa's Patreon page and support her for as little as, I think, $2 is the lowest tier?
Yep, $2 is the lowest tier. The first episode's already up there, so you can go. And our reaction was quite long. I had to cut out a lot of stuff. Yeah. So if you want to watch it, you can head over there.
Right, let's do it. Coven.
Got a black magic woman.
So we're going to start with shock horror, Black Sabbath. Yeah. Makes sense to listen to Black Sabbath. So here we go. None of that feels like metal to me.
No, it feels like rock that is inspired by a lot of soul artists There's a lot of like...
It's very theatrical.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. There's a lot of like, wah,
Yeah.
happening.
You could imagine Bowie at a Coven concert and being like, oh yeah, there's cool stuff in this. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's super arty, super proggy, psychedelic. They're taking themselves very seriously, but you described it as super camp.
It's super camp.
And not heavy in the slightest.
It's not, no. I do, like, it's kind of what you were saying there. It's the drums, to me, would be heavier than anything I would expect to hear at that time in popular music. But it isn't, it's not metal drumming. They've got the vibe there, because if you think about, like, when we were listening to Black Sabbath and even Ozzy, when Ozzy's doing his thing, like I got me Mr. Tingle. I know that's further on.
Yeah, that's.
But
like
it always
91.
starts with like, whoa, camp, Hammer House of Horror.
I think we'd also both agree that it was cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I will listen to that again.
It was totally cool. I can confidently say that I will catch Melisa listening to this album in the house to get a feel for what other tracks on it you enjoy. Would that be fair?
Oh, I will listen to this whole album. There's one called Choke, Thirst, Die. There's Wicked Women and Dignitaries of Hell. I'm so in.
Yeah. So we're going to play another one. We're going to play Wicked Woman, just because it's the most played track on the album. I feel that's a good place to jump in. And, check out the Spotify playlist. I'm sure Mel will add some tracks from this that she really enjoyed.
The entire album.
You're never allowed to add an entire album.
I won't add an entire album.
So this is Wicked Woman. And of course, typically, while we were listening to that, there was something I was going to say, and I was like, no, I'll save that actually until after. Oh. And now I've forgotten what it was that I was going to say.
Motherfucker.
This is why you should just say the things that come into your head.
This is why you should hold the people you love.
Yeah, that was heavier.
Mm-hmm. She was doing distorted vocals.
Yep.
Because
she was the only thing doing distortion.
Yeah, she
and there was a little bit of distortion on the lead guitar, but there were definitely sections in there where you were like, if you change those major and minor chords that the clean rhythm guitar is playing for distorted power chords, if you put a little bit of grit on the bass and you tell the drummer to fucking hit the skins like they're going out of fashion, this would be pretty metal.
Sure.
But as it is, definitely to me not metal, but so obviously like right there at the start of it,
like
teetering on the edge.
Absolutely. Like, if you look at fucking King Diamond, you're trying to tell me there's nothing in this that King Diamond... I mean, King Diamond was obviously an earlier performer. I don't actually know when King Diamond started, which I feel bad about. I feel like it was the 80s. It sounds like Creedence Clearwater gave Nancy Sinatra some crystal meth, and they all got together and just was like, you know what, see if we summon demons. Let's do that.
And it's probably worth mentioning the album cover. He got members of the band on there. I don't know which one is the drummer, which one is the guitarist. We know who the singer is, but one of them looks severely malnourished. Severely malnourished. Like he's not even skin and bone. He's just bone.
We don't judge.
Is that Oz Osbourne?
That's Oz Osbourne. He'd already been murdered.
He was murdered.
He'd already been murdered by Ozzy Osbourne before that.
Yeah.
Ozzy Osbourne, I see you.
Yeah.
I'm going to out you at your final show, Ozzy Osbourne.
Okay, so the other band that I wanted to bring up, or you wanted to bring up, that we wanted to bring some attention to, is the band Sir Lord Baltimore.
I thought you were going to say sirloin. And I was like, that sounds delicious.
Yeah. I know, Sir Lord Baltimore. They had a record called Kingdom Come, and it was, so my memory has been triggered now, it was Kingdom Come that was first described as heavy metal.
Ah, okay.
So, Sir Lord Baltimore. While I'm pulling up this record on Spotify, can you just pull up Sir Lord Baltimore on Wikipedia and tell the audience something about them?
Sure.
I don't like the name.
You don't like sirloin...
Sirloin's bolty bum.
Sirloin bolty bum.
This record has more plays. It's worth pointing out that this did come out in 1970, so it is the same year as the Sabbath record.
Okay, so Sir Lord Baltimore was an American rock band from Brooklyn, New York City, formed in 1968 by...
You've been there.
I have been there. Hey Renee, have you ever watched this? Where was I? Oh yeah. In 1968 by lead vocalist and drummer John Garner, guitarist Louis Dambra, and bassist Gary Justin. Some have cited the 1971 review of their debut record Kingdom Come in Cream magazine as containing the first documented use of the term heavy metal to refer to the style.
Okay. So, shall we give it a spin?
Yes, please.
So we're hoping that this is heavy metal, but
Says you.
heavy metal that we'd forgotten about, that the world had
Sure.
forgotten about, that Sabbath came in and stole.
I've already found my favourite band today. We could literally switch the cameras off right now, and then I'm going to go and skip around like Stevie Nicks in the kitchen. And
Okay,
listen
it's
to
been
Coven.
lovely seeing you, everybody, but we'll be back next week. I will have to find a new host because Melissa has gone and joined the Witches in the Woods.
Godspeed.
So we'll start out with the first opening track, Master Heartache. Interesting.
Yeah. So it has all of those things that metal has. So it has, a bit more distortion in it. It has a bit more heaviness to it. And the vocals in it are great. The guy's also singing with a natural distortion. Do you know the thing that makes me kind of like almost a little bit sad, almost not wanting it to be that?
Go on.
It's undoubtedly have happened tens of thousands, if not more times throughout music history, that somebody else has been responsible for creating this new amazing sound through lots of influences that they've consumed, but were never given the actual credit for it because they went in the right place at the right time. And that makes me sad.
Well, as it started playing, I immediately commented on, this is heavier, because there was like distortion on the bass and the guitar player can play. And there's lots of sections where there's tight unisons between the guitar and the bass, tight for 1970. And they're playing with rhythms, 16th notes and triplets, and like mixing them up, and the drums are all playing in unison, which feels kind of metally. But then you mentioned Zepplin, and I went, okay, yeah. This is a blues rock song. What do you remember of the lyrics?
Woman!
Yeah, there's a lot about a woman. Yeah, it's not dark. No, it didn't feel dark to me.
But sorry.
No.
They do have a track called Hellhound.
Yeah.
So maybe
Zeppelin have a track called Black Dog.
it's all coming together. It's all coming together.
Yeah. So on reflection, I think that they actually sound more like Zeppelin. And Zeppelin are obviously older than this.
Yeah.
So, but it was cool.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Let's go on and check out Hard Rain Feeling. We're going to check this one out and Kingdom Come. Just because, we'll do a brief listen to I Got a Woman. And again, I'm purely picking those based on plays.
Okay.
So you would assume that, the cream rises to the top. People go and listen to the songs that they like.
Absolutely fucking not. The top 5 most listened to songs for Tom Waits are like not even close to his best songs.
But they are the popular ones. Okay, so Hard Rain Falling. A cross between Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin.
I don't know what effect they've put on his vocals, but I fucking hate it.
Yeah. So I think that was just distortion coming from the clipping of the signal.
Yeah, it's like they've turned the gain up to the point where it's just
But then it also felt like they were doing that, but then they were applying a delay to it, but only to the distorted bit.
Hideous.
Yeah, I heard it bouncing around in the stereo
Whoa.
field. But if your intention in 1970 is to make music that old people think is
evil,
yeah, or you want to essentially say fuck you to the establishment, that feels pretty anti-establishment. So
sure.
I obviously question, why do I keep coming back to Black Sabbath as being the first metal band?
Because you're English.
Because I'm English.
Because he's English.
No, because ultimately that's what the history books have told me for long enough.
And history's written by the winners.
Yeah. Black Sabbath won. And I say this as somebody who's not that big a Black Sabbath fan.
We're going to go and see Zakk Wylde
because Zakk Wylde is doing it.
Okay,
I'm
fair.
a huge Zakk Wylde fan.
You are that.
A massive Zakk Wylde fan.
Fair.
I would go and see Zakk Wylde open a letterbox. Is that the terminology? Is that what people say?
No, but you know what?
The opening of an envelope.
We should create...
I go to the opening
of an envelope. I like the opening of a letterbox.
That works. Yeah, it's because it's Zakk Wylde. If it was literally any other person doing Sabbath tunes, I would have no interest in going to see it. Though saying that, Zakk Wylde is currently the guitar player in Pantera, and I have no interest in going to see that. So
he is?
Yeah.
Zakk Wylde?
Is the guitar player for Pantera.
For Pantera?
Yes. Well, Dimebag's been dead for over 20 years.
No, I understand. I know. Christ, don't I know it when everyone's fucking complaining at me in the comment section.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have no interest in going. But then I guess I know. I can tell you why. Zakk Wylde doing Pantera, he's supposed to be playing like Dimebag, even though there's only so much you can play like Dimebag when you are Zakk. Mm-hmm. But Black Sabbath is Zakk Wylde playing Black Sabbath tunes, but he's playing like Zakk Wylde.
Okay.
So anyway, so I don't know why that came up, but it did.
You were talking about Black Sabbath, how you'll always think that Black Sabbath is the.
But I was saying that I'm not actually a big Black Sabbath fan. Like, I have no interest in going down to Birmingham to see their final show. Even if I got gifted tickets to it, I still wouldn't have any interest in going down. So.
Yeah, because we don't want to see Ozzy Osbourne being Frankie Valli.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sherry, baby.
Okay. Kingdom Come.
Thy will be done.
I was saying on the track that the problem with that track is that the drummer is awful on it. He is not matching the energy of the bass and guitar, and the drums are recorded so badly that it's like the performance of what he's playing on the drums isn't the best, and it's made to sound even worse by how weakly recorded it is. And the mix on it. Like, it would probably sound better if you punched that kick drum up in volume significantly.
Yeah.
But even then, it's got that sound of like a 15-inch old school swing band kick drum sound to it.
Recorded 3 rooms over.
Yeah, not impressed with the drums on it, but it definitely had a much more metal sound.
I liked it a lot. I liked the fuzziness.
Okay, we should quickly find out if I Got a Woman is in fact a Ray Charles cover.
I really hope so.
This is actually the song I sing when I wake up in the morning. This is how I get Melisa up out of bed.
Oh, you just go, I got a woman.
Yeah, I'm just celebrating the fact that somebody would actually sleep in a bed with me.
That was a weird thing to say.
I know. That's the way I'm.
I said something weird about you I was editing through Falling in Reverse today, and I talk about the podcast, and I went, I have a new podcast with my co-host Levi Clay. I live in the same house as him. It was so weird.
I mean, but it is factually accurate.
It's factually accurate.
And what more can you ask for? What would you prefer, being factually accurate or David Draymond? We give Mel gives David she's clearly got some partially resolved trauma around David Draymond.
I actually don't.
And his fans.
I don't. I think honestly, I think he's got a good voice.
Yeah.
And I think that
Disturbed are a really good band.
Yeah, Disturbed are a great band.
But Sound of Silence is fucking terrible.
Sound of Silence is fucking terrible, and also the people that follow them are all a bunch of fucking knuckle dragging. Not correction.
I could put on the 10,000 Fists in the Air record or Indestructible any day of the week, and I'd have a good time.
Yeah.
They've got a sound, and I like them. I like them more than Kingdom Come and Coven.
How dare you?
I do think that while Kingdom Come were definitely more metal than Coven, I think Coven would cooler.
Okay, but it's sirloin.
Yeah, sorry, I'm looking up and I just keep seeing Kingdom Come in big letters. You are correct. It is Sir Lord Baltimore.
Well, that's unfortunate for you because I'm about to make Coven my new personality. Because that's the thing, right? It's the spookiness that I love, because that spookiness, in my opinion, it lives in a lot of different places in music, but it also lives in like theatre and horror movies and all that thing. And it doesn't annoy me, but sometimes I'm a bit like, that's not fair. How come metal gets to have that? How come metal gets to have that all the time, gets the spookiness? I would like to be really spooky and do soul music. Why is that? Why does everyone find that peculiar, you know?
No, I don't. You can't. Spooky and soul don't go together.
But they do.
No, but they don't.
Why?
Because soul music is like loving music. It's not threatening. Threatening soul music.
Should be.
Threatening. That'll be the next single. Some threatening soul. It doesn't. Yeah. Soul music isn't angry music.
Okay, but what about things?
Soul music, sex music.
Okay.
Is that not fair?
I think it's a mix of love and sex.
It's sex music dressed up as love songs.
That's not true, because you've got stuff like Otis Redding did love songs. Yeah.
I'm waiting for you to say one.
These arms of mine.
Sex song dressed up as a love song.
It's not a fucking sex song.
They're yearning.
The AI.
What are they yearning for?
Why are you doing this like William Shatner spoken word
What
version
are
of
they
Lord
yearning,
Fitton?
what are they yearning for?
The AI.
A good fisting. That has been Does Metal Have Soul, episode 2. We really do hope you've enjoyed the show. Please do give us feedback in the comment section below. We will be back next week for another slice of tightly edited entertainment for your...
I was so worried about what you were. Another slice of tightly. What?
Yeah, tightly wound frustration and psychosis.
I'm worried that I sleep in the same bed as you.
Okay, goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bonsoir.